Our story begins in the fall of 2017. I had been out of touch with hip-hop for a long time. The last new album I had really listened to was Life of Pablo, almost 2 years beforehand. This changed as I discovered rappers like Lil Uzi Vert, Malone and Jaden Smith, among others, thanks to my friends at college. What stood out to me most about the state of hip-hop in 2017 was the prevalence of rappers inspired by emo music from years ago. Artists like Lil Peep, X, Joji, and more fall into this category, while Lil Peep especially struck me as exceptional. I revisited his songs time and time again, feeling almost like I had tapped into a continuation of the Midwest emo I had been so fond of as a younger teenager. Peep's music had more in common with bands like Teen Suicide, Foxing, and Salvia Palth than his hip-hop contemporaries. His rhythmic guitar playing, emo imagery, and depressing lyrics captured my heart. And then, on November 15th, 2017, he was found dead in his tour bus at the age of 21. Today I'm going to discuss his legacy in an attempt to answer the question thousands of people have asked in the wake of his death. Was he even good? Lil Peep's death changed how people see his art. He was deified almost instantly as a victim of his era, killed by an accidental overdose on Xanax laced with fentanyl, a deadly combination that's killing thousands of people per year in the US. A recent wave of fentanyl overdoses, culminating in Lil Peep's death, closely reflects the gang-related deaths of Tupac and Biggie over 20 years ago. Like many others, these artists were killed by the vices they glorified in their music. Peep especially lived in a culture of constant drug use. His Instagram posts were dominated by the glorification of drugs and depression. Peep's manager, Chase Ortega, tweeted on the night of his death that he had been expecting it for a year. Ultimately, the toxic culture of addiction and apathy that Peep himself created is what killed him. In retrospect, Peep is revered by many. The tragic loss of his artistic potential is still mourned, while his music only grows in popularity to this day. He's a favorite of emo kids that still make AMVs on YouTube and long to escape their tortured suburban existences. I'm reminded of the community surrounding Baltimore band American Pleasure Club, formerly known as Teen Suicide. Along with Peep, they convey an intentional aesthetic of growing up and the realization of mediocrity that most people experience in their lives. As for Peep's music, it's a perfect fusion of emo rock with hip-hop. Emotionally vulnerable but stained by standard hip-hop fronting, Peep's music was polarizing while it pushed the genre into new territory. His songs like Star Shopping and You Said use guitars in a way that's sonically familiar but strays from what we're typically used to hearing. In Peep's songs, the guitar provides texture and rhythm over melody. For the most part, the melody in Peep's music comes from the synths or Peep himself rapping over a typically melancholy, drifting beat. One of the things that stands out most to me about Peep's musical style is the presence of typically creepy motifs and sounds, a lot of which might seem foreign in hip-hop, perhaps being more familiar in niche internet-born genres like Witch House. Campy horror film screams on Beamer Boy, synths on Absolute in Doubt, and party store ambiance across many of his tracks create a unique atmosphere of lonely teenage sadness. A close collaborator of Peep's, Wicca Phase Springs Eternal, began his musical career as a guitarist for the Pennsylvania emo band Tiger's Jaw, giving yet more weight to my assertion that emo rap and emo rock walk hand in hand. Samples abound in Lil Peep's music. He paid homage to bands like Brand New, Avenged Sevenfold, Sonic Youth, The Microphones, and The Postal Service, all favorites of sad, mall-going kids from the last decade or two. Despite this, Peep is far from adored by the crowd that loved the aforementioned rock bands. In fact, I'd wager a guess that most of his fans have no idea who those bands are. Peep was covered in edgy tattoos, fully immersed in the lifestyle of drug and heartbreak-fueled apathy. A huge amount of his songs focused on his eventual death, making grim predictions for his legacy as a lover and a musician. It's easy to look at his face tattoos, drug problem, and seeming inability to maintain a relationship and think that he couldn't possibly be more shallow. I won't fault you if that's the assessment you made, because you wouldn't be totally wrong, but I believe that a deeper look into Peep's music is entirely possible. He represents the expansion of hip-hop into uncharted territory, no matter how possibly embarrassing or unproductive. In the 2010s, hip-hop has established itself as the default genre of popular music, and Peep's combination of witch house and emo rock with hip-hop is arguably his greatest contribution to music. I think what confuses people most about Peep's music is how he was simultaneously a talented artist and a poor influence on his listeners. He wasn't the first musician to exist in this category, but he's an especially good example of it. For a lot of people, Peep's music was the expression of the struggle to stay alive, for any reason. His music continued a now long-running tradition, updating it for a generation of kids who don't remember what life was like before the iPhone was an essential piece of the social puzzle. Fundamentally, there isn't much separating Lil Peep and a musician like Kurt Cobain. Along with many others, they tapped into the same feelings and had the same attitudes of wanting to better the world for their friends while being simultaneously unable to help themselves. Peep regularly warned his fans against drug use on social media. I have no doubt that Peep won't be the last young musician to succumb to his vices, but it's important that we don't forget him. Loss of artistic potential is a terribly sad thing, and there's no doubt in my mind that Peep had an influential career ahead of him. To answer the question I asked at the beginning of the video, I think Peep was a good musician. He made music at an incredible pace and tried his best to bring good into the world, despite his incredibly misguided values and circumstances. Young people have always been apathetic, but our values are vanishing today more so than ever. I hesitate to blame Peep for his own death when I take into account the echo chambers that exist in certain communities, especially that of music. Peep was a rock star. He burned bright and died young, and it's not what was best for him, but I'm sure it's a risk he was well aware of.
I've been hearing a lot from Gus's fans, and I'm very touched by how many of them really get him. This is from Rat Hole in Hilton Head, South Carolina. I wanted to also tell you, Jenny and Liza, as well, what set Gus apart. Any other musician or famous person to me out there, Gus was absolutely the most selfless human being I've ever known in life. I never got to meet him, but through him giving us so much of his time and heart that he spent on his live feeds, such as Snapchat, Instagram, to be with us, communicate with us, even after he'd worked all night performing at his events, showed how much he truly loved people. I don't know of any famous person that's let the outside regular people like me that aren't famous into their lives. He was completely unique, a gift from God that was handed down to us for a short period of time to change the world for the better. His big brown eyes and contagious smile will forever have a part of my heart. Thank you, Liza and Jenny, for blessing the world with a beautiful, loving, beaming creation of Gustav Ore.